Many people associate ego primarily with boastful behavior. Typical examples are the successful show-off who loves to flaunt his status, money, or achievements. Outwardly, they look confident, but deep down on the inside, they depend on admiration to feel like they matter. Perhaps you are also well known with the hard worker who wants to do everything perfectly because that's how it should be, but deep down fears not being good enough. Then there are people who fall under the know-it-all category. This type wants to be right in everything because uncertainty just feels unbearable. And my last example is the spiritually enlightened type who quietly enjoys how far they have come on their path, and secretly believes they have reached something others haven't. The ego also develops in diminishing behavior. Think of the helper who is always there for others, but does so partly to remain needed because they feel worthless without that role. Think of the self-doubter who constantly puts themselves down before anyone else can. They use humility as a shield because if they admit their flaws first, rejection will hurt less. And lastly, we all know the people pleaser who bends in every direction to keep the peace. They avoid conflict at all costs, convinced that being liked is safer than being honest. In all these forms, the ego is busy maintaining its self-image, whether it's a negative or a positive image. Sometimes by inflating itself and sometimes by diminishing itself, but always to confirm who it believes it is. And in a nutshell, that's simply what the ego is, a learned self-image. Now, that learned self-image is actually quite functional. It's a psychological construct that helps you live in this world. It helps you form relationships, do your job, determines whether you like dark or blonde hair, whether you like spinach or pasta, and all sorts of other things. So it's actually unfair that it's often labeled as something bad because people tend to forget the functional part. The thing is that the ego only becomes a problem when you identify with it, when you start to think that's who you truly are. Then suffering can arise because then you are lonely, then you are insecure, then you are ugly. People who don't know they aren't their ego actually experience the identification with those emotions or findings, and they have become it. Few say, for example, I am experiencing strong feelings of loneliness tonight. They are that. So here you can clearly see the distinction between thinking you are something and knowing you are simply the experiencer of that emotion. Big difference. That last sentence alone creates the separation you need to understand this principle well. You are not what you feel. You are the experiencer of it. You are not your thoughts, but you are the observer of them. You are not your learned self-image, your ego, but the awareness in which all of that appears. You can then allow the ego to function without mistaking it for who you are. It's simply a part you perform, as we all do, a role. Like at work, you play the role of the professional who knows what they're doing. You take responsibility, defend your positions, make plans, appointments, but deep down you know this isn't who I am. This is the role I play to contribute. Or in your relationship, you sometimes play the role of a partner, a parent, caregiver. You react based on patterns, emotions, expectations. But when you take a step back for a moment, you realize there's something within you that remains present, independent of that role. In a conflict, you notice how your ego wants to be right, or how it withdraws to keep the peace, and yet you can see it as something happening within you. Not you who has to win or lose, but behavior that serves a purpose. So yeah, it doesn't matter what you do or who you are. Everyone has an ego. Anyone who has grown up around and with other people has developed a human ego. The ego, it develops already early in childhood, usually between the ages of 2 and 6. And this is the moment when a child begins to realize that love and approval are not self-evident. To make that more tangible, I want to explain you a few ways this realization takes shape in everyday situations, like a child who cries and is told, "Stop crying, that will make you a big boy." Eh? That child learns that showing sadness is undesirable and later can develop the role of a strong, rational man. Or a girl who mainly receives compliments when she's kind and helpful learns that her value lies in caring and grows into a people pleaser who has a hard time saying no to others. Or a child who only receives attention for good grades or athletic achievements learns that love must be earned and develops a perfectionistic self-image. An active or imaginative child who is often told, "Just act normal," withdraws, becomes quiet and cautious, afraid to deviate. Children who are compared to siblings or classmates, they learn to measure themselves against others, which later leads to the need for a competition in order to feel good, or they become totally insecure. In all these situations, the same pattern emerges. It's a child who adapts to maintain love and in the process loses some of his or her original spontaneity. The ego then develops in a certain direction. It forms as a response to what seemed necessary in that environment to gain love, attention, or security. So perhaps this also illustrates well the fact that it is actually a functional mechanism because it does what it thinks is necessary to survive. It thinks it's protecting you, and in a sense it does because it helps you to avoid rejection and find structures, set goals, maintain your place in the group. That makes it functional, not flawed. The only problem arises later, when circumstances change but the mechanism continues to operate in the same way as it used to do. Then, for example, you keep overachieving, even though you're already safe. Or you keep trying to please, even though no one demands it of you anymore. Then the ego continues to fight old ghosts in the new reality. You often see the ego really kick in relationships. That's because all sorts of sensitive buttons are pushed in relationships. The need for validation, the fear of abandonment, jealousy, the need to be right, control, all attempts by the ego to avoid experiencing all pain again. That's why love can be so intense. It directly touches the places where we once thought we had to become or do something to remain loved. And that's where many people make a big misconception. They look for love externally. I seriously think that 99% of people do this. Well, if you really think about it, it's impossible. Most people, they treat love like it's something to get, like a resource someone else has to give them. But that idea already starts from separation, like you have what I lack. But if love depends on the other person behaving a certain way, it stops being love. It actually turns into a transaction. What we actually call falling in love is often a temporary collapse of ego boundaries, like a glimpse of the wholeness that was already there. Then as the infatuation fades, the ego comes back and says, "Oh wait, I need you to keep making me feel complete." That's where the tension begins. The truth is, besides you already being complete as you are, you can't really receive love. You can recognize it. People often say they can give love, but that's not really what happens. You don't give love. You share it. Love isn't something you possess and hand over. It's something that moves through you when the illusion of separation fades. If love were truly transferable, then the same act would create the same feeling in everyone, right? Music, maybe it's a weird example, but hear me out. Music shows why it doesn't work that way. One song makes one person cry, while another feels nothing, because it resonates with their memories, meanings, timing, and state of mind. The notes and melody of the song are shared, yet the feeling is revealed from within the listener. And I think love works the same way. What we receive from another is just a signal that touches what's already present in us. And our nervous system opens to it. So we don't really receive love from the outside, we recognize it and then allow it to flow. But we do seek it outwardly because that's what we've been taught. Our egos have developed this way. Parents, they smile when you do something good. They reject you or correct you when you don't. Your brain then makes a connection. Oh, I receive love from others and I have to do something to earn it. And from that misunderstanding, we continue to search as adults through partners, through achievements, compliments, likes, not because we're superficial, but because it once worked. It briefly provided a sense of security. And I think this, let's say, neediness already develops in infancy, in a pre-ego phase, where we already experience an extremely high level of neediness. After all, we die if we are not cared for. In that first phase of life, a baby must be dependent. There's no distinction yet between me and the other. Hunger, cold, touch, everything is purely physical necessity. The baby is its need. And because every satisfaction, like milk, warmth, touch, always comes from the outside, the nervous system unconsciously builds that blueprint, that safety comes from there. That pattern lies deeper than words or thought because it's in the entire body. And later, when the ego is forming, that reflex repeats itself on a psychological level. We still search outside ourselves for the same reassurance. No longer through milk or skin contact, but through attention and recognition and love, things like that. But you can learn to see through that pattern by recognizing that you are not your ego. That's precisely where consciousness begins. Then you realize that the urge for validation, it isn't wrong, it's a remnant of something old. That the urge to maintain control isn't wrong, it's a remnant of something old. That the urge to be seen isn't wrong, it's a remnant of something old. It's okay. You are allowed to feel it. The fight against all those feelings also originates from the ego. It wants to get rid of misery, but perpetuates it by resisting it. The ego even tries to solve its own pain. It says, this isn't allowed, this has to go, and thus create the very tension it wants to avoid. What you resist persists. As soon as you stop fighting, you notice that the emotions naturally begin to move. Sadness, fear, anxiety, they come and go, just like clouds. And just as clouds are illuminated by the sun, these emotions are illuminated in your consciousness, and you are not them, just as the sun is not the clouds. The ego is seriously a topic I could talk about forever, but that would make this video endless. It's just such an incredibly broad subject, and understanding it / seeing through it is impactful. It has changed my entire life. For anyone who wants to know more about the ego, has questions based on this video, or is curious about a specific direction on this topic, please let me know down in the comments, and I will do my utmost to help you to the best of my knowledge. The beauty is that you can explore all this about the ego for yourself. You don't have to believe what I say, but you can investigate for yourself whether it's true. It's not a belief you have to accept. It's something you can experience directly. You only have to notice what's happening inside you. When do you feel touched, threatened, proud, hurt? And who or what actually notices that? That simple inquiry, without judgment, is the awakening all those books write about. Not accepting a new truth, but seeing what's already true, seeing what's already present, and in an honest way. And that type of honesty takes guts. It can be very confronting. And it's not surprising when you slowly realize that you're actually not at all who you think you are.